ant colony. That means they have the government form of unification, which is it's really interesting. It gives you big bonuses to farming and industry. You are immune to the effects of morale. So normally the other governments start off with a morale penalty until you build, like, I don't know, barracks or something on their planet. But then you can build like entertainment centers and generally like things like that, which boost their morale. And the happier they are, the better they produce. So Clacons don't get any morale benefits or penalties at all. They just ignore morale, which means early on it's nice, you don't have to worry about the negative morale, but later on you don't get to take the advantage of the positive morale buildings. That being said, they do get a pretty good bonus to farming and production, so unification is a pretty good government type. They also get a big bonus to defensive espionage. And they get good food production, good industrial production, so they're actually in a really good position to, like, do really well. The only problem is that they're uncreative, and I'll explain what that is a little later. The Mechlars are I told you this is a super tutorial, like, intro to the game. If I'll have to remember and make me put some sort of link at the beginning of the video to, like, here's where we start the game, click here, because some people will complain. And you know, that's fine, not everyone wants this and some people do. So the Mechlars are a cybernetic race. They actually get a really big production bonus. They're also but their cybernetic is their big thing. And cybernetic means they only eat half as much, but they have to supplement their food with sort of production, which, you know, is it energy or are they eating minerals? I don't know. But they eat into your production a little bit, which is kind of interesting. It's not great. But the one advantage they have is they can repair their ships really fast. So they, like, repair every combat turn. I think they, like, full heal at the end of every combat or something like that. So that's pretty cool. The Mershana are a cat-like race. They're very good warriors. They get a huge bonus to attacking. They also start with a rich homeworld. And they also have the Warlord trait, which means all their units start with one extra level of experience. The Cylons are the super smart race, and they tend to be really, really good in this game for that reason. They're not terribly aggressive, but if you leave them alone long enough, they're going to out-tech you and just dominate the game. They're also a low-gravity race, doesn't really matter. They're creative, and just like uncreative, which is what the Clacons are, I'll explain what that means a little bit later. They also get a big research bonus, so yeah, super. The Saccharins are like lizard dinosaur people, and they're purple apparently. They got some, like, nice Jersey Shore chains around their neck. So these guys are, like, they're actually really cool. They get a huge bonus to population growth and food production, and they're a subterranean race. So when they colonize a planet, not only are they living on the surface or whatever, but they also dig these huge tunnels underground, which means they can fit a lot more people on a planet, which is good because they grow a lot faster. And also they get a bonus to defending against ground invasions, which is not terribly important. The big thing of this race is their planets can fit a lot of people, and they tend to fill up the population very quickly. And because of that, despite the fact that they're feudal, which gives them a research penalty, although it does give them a ship production bonus, what it means is they've got such a large population base that they tend to quickly run away with the game. The big threats in the game tend to be the Saccharins. The humans aren't bad either because they're a democracy. The Cylons are good if you leave them alone, and the Clacons can be dangerous if they get the right combination of techs. Again, this ties into their uncreative trait, which I'll explain later. But the Saccharine tends to be a pretty big threat, especially if you allow them to get lots of planets and then max out their population. The Silicoids are really, really, really cool. They're a crystalline race. They actually grow really slowly, but they're lithivores. And by being lithivores means they just eat rocks. They don't eat any food whatsoever. So you don't need farmers at all. By eating rocks, it means they cut into your production a little bit. So instead of feeding people with farmers, you feed them with, like, workers. And I guess it's sort of an advantage, but the problem is that the lithivore trait is worth, like, a lot of points. So you don't usually take it when you're making a custom race, but it's very cool. They're also repulsive, which could mean either they're, like, super ugly or they're just they can't really communicate with other races. As a result, you cannot engage in diplomacy as the Silicoids. The only options you have are go to war and declare peace. That's it. That's all. Nothing else. They're also tolerant, which is not tolerant of other people, but tolerant of harsh environments. And what it means is that they can fit more people on a planet. It's similar to subterranean that way, but also they ignore the effects of pollution, and pollution is a pretty big effect. You'll see it once we get into the game. And so tolerant, what it translates to is a huge, huge bonus to production, because when you produce stuff, when you work on buildings, for example, you create pollution, and for every point of pollution you create, it takes you 1 unit of production to clean it up. So what happens is pollution cuts down on your production considerably. And if you can just ignore pollution, that means you get a lot more production. Also, tolerant plus subterranean is a really cool combo if you want to put a lot of people on one planet. It's kind of cool. And finally, we've got the Trilarians, which are an aquatic race. And the aquatic trait means they treat both ocean planets and Terran planets, Terran would be like Earth-like, as Gaian planets. And Gaian planets are like the most perfect planets in the world. You get more food and you can fit more people. So again, it's another one of those really high population traits. Also lets you get a little bit more food out of ocean planets, which don't generally farm quite as well. And also transdimensional, which apparently gives them like +1 movement speed or something. And I think they can even move their ships without warp drive. So if you're doing a pre-warp start, it gives you a certain edge there, but in practice it's not worth the trait. Aquatic is cool, but we're going to go custom. And when you go custom, you've got to choose what race picture to use, and I like to take the Ilarians because the Ilarians generally don't do very well in the game, as I explained. Or I'll do that, or I'll take like the Bulrathi sometimes, because usually I want to increase the challenge. Like, if you want to be cheesy, you could take the Saccharins, because if you're the Sacra, even as a custom race, then the real Sacra won't be in the game. And like I said, they're hard. But the Ilarians are not generally that dangerous. So by taking them out, it increases the challenge of the game. Plus, you get a really cool person to look at. And let me clear this. By default, it selects all the traits that the race, like for example here, the Ilarians have. So I'm going to clear this out because I don't want their traits. And here we go. Down here it tells me I have 10 picks to use up, and you can see that everything has a point cost. For example, if I were to take Tolerant, which costs 10, I'm now out of points. However, I can take negative traits, and those are the ones with the minuses here. I can take up to 10 points those. So for example, if I went uncreative and repulsive, now I can no longer take any negative traits, like the ground combat here. Racial penalties only allow up to -10, but it has freed up another 10 points. So in practice, you can have up to 20 points worth of positive picks, but you have to offset that with up to 10 negative picks. So I'm not going to go through all these options because there's just too many of them, but most of them here, it's quite straightforward. You're going to get a very straight bonus to various things. The more complex ones are the special abilities and the government types. Now, I said that I was going to play a very research-oriented race because that usually does very well. So I'm going to pick creative first of all. Creative is probably the strongest pick in the whole game. In fact, when the game originally came out, it was only worth 6, but they had to increase the cost to 8. But frankly, I think if this was a 20 cost pick, it would still be the best pick in the game, and most people would still end up taking it. It's super good, and unfortunately, I can't really explain how it works until we're in the game. But here's creative and uncreative. Uncreative is a really harsh pick, and creative is incredibly, incredibly good. It has to do with research, and I'll explain to you once we're in the game. I'm also going to pick up democracy. Now, democracy, and I can right-click here to get some information. So these are government types. Dictatorship is the standard government type. Feudal is actually a negative pick because it gives you a research penalty. 50% research penalty. It's pretty bad. But your ship costs are reduced by 1/3, which is awfully nice. And then you've got democracy, which gives you a big bonus to research. You get 50% extra research, which is awesome. And they also promote trade, which gives you 50% more tax revenue, which is quite nice. Because of the freedom in the society, you get a penalty to defensive espionage, so it's easier for people to spy on you. But generally speaking, it's a really good pick for research. Again, unification is really good for production. 50% more industrial production, 50% more food. Democracy is good for science. Those are my two. I like them both quite a bit. But with creative, we're going to end up with a lot of morale boosting techs. So unification, you actually lose out on that bonus quite a bit. But yeah, anyway. Democracy. So, and then we've got a couple more traits to pick. Or we've got up to 5 points we can afford if we would like. I'm trying to decide here. I think I might go artifact world and a large homeworld. So a large homeworld is, kind of obvious. Your starting planet is simply going to be a little bit bigger, which helps you fit more people on there, which is great. Your homeworld tends to be your best place in general. You're guaranteed to have abundant minerals, unless you take rich or poor homeworld, which would tweak that a little bit. Which are actually rich homeworld's really good. I would never go poor, but rich homeworld's very good. An artifact homeworld means your scientists on this planet would give you +2 research. Now note, if I were to take +2 research across my whole empire, it would cost me 6. So you might say, well, isn't it worthwhile spending the extra points to get more research all across your empire? Well, maybe, but the fact of the matter is, your homeworld is probably going to be your #1 research place for most of the game. So it's not a bad choice. Rich homeworld's also very good. I tend to stay away from these guys a little bit. I don't know. I think this is a good set of picks. So at this point, I'm at -9, so I've got to buy up 9 points of penalties. So I often take ground combat penalty because you can make up for this with technology. It's not particularly critical. In fact, a lot of times I end up taking the ship defense and ship attack penalties. Especially if you're creative, it doesn't hurt that much because you make up for it in technology pretty quickly. Also, these are beam attack, I believe. So if you use missiles early on, this won't affect you too much. Finally, I have 3 picks left. Well, I'm going to take a spying penalty as well. This hurts a little bit more, especially when you combo with democracy. It's going to be very easy for people to spy on me. So I'm going to have to make sure to both build a lot of spies and also research some of the technologies to improve my spying. Otherwise, people are going to get a free ride on my tech. But that adds up to -9 very nicely. I don't tend to grab any of the penalties from over here. I just find them a little too harsh. Maybe you can get away with a food penalty. What else do I get? Low G homeworld I get sometimes. Repulsive actually is not bad if you don't like playing a diplomacy game. And frankly, since I'm creative, I won't need to trade techs. That's interesting. It is worth a whopping 6 points not to do any diplomacy. You lose out on a really interesting aspect of the game. And I don't like to pick it if I'm not creative, but now I'm wondering if I should. The question is diplomacy an important aspect to show in this Let's Play? You do get to set up trade routes, or trade treaties, research treaties. But that's really about it. People are naturally going to dislike me more and probably go to war a lot more. And the heroes are more expensive. We'll leave it like this. We won't. With creative, we're not really going to get that much out of diplomacy, but it'll still be good. And yeah, so I'm going to accept this. We could change the name of our race right now, but I'm going to leave it at Alarian. I don't mind that. And my ruler name, Borrelia? No, we are going to be Quilla 18, obviously. And choose my banner color. The color of the banner you take actually affects the design of your ships as well. So each one of these colors will have different looking ships. I think the red ones are they look a lot like Star Trek ships. I generally take white because